Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go.
Dear students, Rao's IS has launched its essay, mains test series and quality improvement program for 2021. Now we are all aware of the fact that essay as a paper has emerged as the rank maker in this entire scheme of things from the perspective of mains examination. And all those who score top ranks do very well in the essay paper. We also know that people pay attention to mains test series in terms of general studies paper, but they hardly pay any attention to the essay paper. Keeping this in mind, Rao's IS has launched Essay, Mains Test Series and Quality Improvement Program for 2021. The course features are as follows. First and foremost, there will be Quality Improvement Program classes, which will be live and interactive classes. These will constitute of around 30 hours of essay writing approach and skills, and video backup for the classes will be available for 7 days. Apart from that, there will be an essay compass booklet, which will be a compilation of essays from previous year topics. Second important aspect is the test itself. Now in this program, there will be tests which will be divided into thematic test and full length test. So there will be 3 thematic tests and 3 full length tests in order to help you prepare for the examination in the right format. Any system of learn and test can thrive only when the review mechanism is proper. And for this particular purpose, we'll be sharing with you sample essays. There will be test discussion classes for which video backup will be available till mains 2021. Apart from that, there will be evaluation and personal mentorship available for this particular course. So what are you waiting for? You should enroll yourself in the course, as the course is starting on 8th of February 2021. For more details, visit raosis.com website or call us.
Hello and welcome to today's DNS session. We are going to discuss today's newspaper, The Hindu, Delhi edition dated 29 January 2021. We shall pick up articles important for civil service examination and discuss them as per the demand of the exam. The articles that we shall pick up for discussion have been tabulated in front of you, and the time stamping for the same has been given in the description section. This news article is from page number 1. Stopping hate on television is essential to prevent riots. Supreme Court. Supreme Court, while listening to a batch of petition, has made certain very important observation. The court has said, stopping hate on television was essential for law and order. Chief Justice of India has made a comparison between physical barricades to the mental and emotional barricades. CJI has said that preventing hateful reporting is as powerful as putting barricades. He further stressed that preventing instigation is as important as providing lathis to the policemen. The point he's making is physical preparedness for law and order is important, but as important is mental and emotional preparedness. CGI has said that people are free to adopt any tone on television, but it should not trigger violence or incite hatred. He has said that there is no problem in truthful reporting even if it is unpalatable to certain people, section, community in society. But reporting becomes a problem when it is projected in a way to agitate others. Meaning the tone on television should be such that it should not agitate people. But it's a tough rope to walk on. First of all, enforcing such media ethics may intrude into freedom of expression. And second of all, it's a very subjective thing. Whether the tone of television anchor is agitating people, or it's a style of presentation, or it's a requirement of news delivery, that is very subjective thing. But however, the court has been stressing on the need of a regulator. Solicitor General of India, representing the centre in the court, has talked about News Broadcasting Standard Authority. It's a self-regulatory body. On receiving any complaint, they act upon it and ask the channel to air an apology, and no program is allowed to be broadcasted which violates the program code. In the previous hearings of this same case to which this news pertains, Supreme Court asked the government the mechanism which is in place to deal with fake news in the context of television. Centre filed affidavit in this regard, but there was no mention as to how Cable Television Network Act is helpful in dealing with fake news. The court was not satisfied with the affidavit filed by the center, and again the court is pushing for a regulatory body. Chief Justice of India again has made observation that the power of the center to control media or to enforce media ethics is not same as curbing free speech. The mechanism with whatever usefulness that we have in place was discussed in the DNS 18th November 2020. But the question of having a regulatory body, not self-regulatory in nature, but the one that will be controlled by the center, has been raised again and again by the court, and that is very important for GS paper 2. In the syllabus of GS paper 2, you have regulatory bodies mentioned. So a regulatory body for news media or media in general becomes very important for the coming mains. The overall issue of media ethics is also very important for GS paper 4, ethics, integrity and aptitude. In the beginning of the syllabus, you'll find dimensions of ethics, and in this you do media ethics. And media ethics in detail has been covered in the DNS 20th October 2020 by our illustrious Vaibhav sir. From the governance perspective, what you have to keep looking for as this case closes, whether the center agrees to come up with a regulatory body which will oversee the self-regulatory bodies or the mechanisms that we have in place presently. In today's discussion, I would like to focus on one specific thing. The Chief Justice of India has said that stopping hate on television was essential for law and order. He also has talked about tone used on television and calling for a curb if that agitate others. See, UPSC already has asked a topic in the essay paper in 2019. Biased media is a real threat to Indian democracy. Now, it will be only natural that UPSC ask about media ethics or regulation of media or something on the same periphery in GS papers. UPSC in the mains paper of 2020 has asked this question in GS paper 4. Hatred is destructive of a person's wisdom and conscience, and it can poison a nation's spirit. I'll try to connect the dots here. What begins in the tone of a speaker, how that would agitate others, leading to hate, and finally destroying nation's spirit. Jonathan and Maynard in their work have identified hate speech as important catalyst for mass violence. They also have cited that in the UN War Crimes Tribunal for the war crime that happened in Rwanda, hate speech was identified as one important factor for the genocide that happened in Rwanda. From the perspective and the purpose of our examination, this model I have discussed with you multiple times in previous DNS. The thing is that human behavior comes from attitude, attitude comes from our value system develops based on emotions. And emotion in human beings can come in two various ways. One is our cognition, the information that we hold. Your emotion develops as a reaction to the information that is given to you. And in long term, the knowledge that you have, the wisdom that you have developed. Suppose if government's advisory comes to be safe because of a possible bomb blast or terrorist attack in the area that you're living, then immediately you will have some emotion of fear, panic. If before examination you are pleased to learn that the examination date has been extended, then you may feel happy, elated if you were not well prepared. If you come to think about it, from morning to evening, your emotion, your mood, everything depends on the information that you're possessing. That is one reason why fake news is destructive, because fake news by nature is having fake information, wrong cognition that will develop wrong emotion or negative emotion. There is one additional aspect to this. Emotion in human beings is also developed as a reaction to emotion of others. For example, if an old lady comes and starts crying in front of you because of the misery and difficulty she's facing, then you will also develop some emotion, perhaps sympathy or even empathy. If father tells on his deathbed to his son something, son receives not just the information, but that information is wrapped up with lots of emotion because it is coming from the father at that juncture of his life. The point is that cognition develops emotion, but emotion is also developed by emotion of the person giving the information. If you receive the information that people of certain community have gathered at a place, and because of that there has been further spread of COVID-19 in the society. If you receive this information, you will understand that the people of the community, the leaders, they have acted irresponsibly. You will develop certain attitude towards them, which may or may not change in the due course of time. But attitude, as you can see from this model, develops not only from cognition but also emotion. In fact, cognition and emotion are two components of attitude. It also depends the manner and the way in which you have received the information. If the person or the television news anchor has delivered the information in a very agitative manner, if you have received the information in very loud tone with disgust, shock, anger, that will create some reactionary emotion in you. You may also feel disgusted. You may also develop the negative emotion of hate. Now your attitude will be compounded. The attitude formation is not result of only information, but that is also result of negative emotion. This attitude will be very, very strong. And that will make the attitudinal change very difficult. Even if you have some positive experience later on, you get some positive information, that may not undo the negativity that you have imbibed. That may not change the negative attitude that you have already formed. So hate speech not only sometimes gives fake information, false information, inaccurate information, but it also develops negative emotion, maybe apathy or even more hate. Supreme Court in various judgment has observed that hate speech leads to marginalization of vulnerable section. Vulnerable section, by its very nature definition, requires more attention, more help. If by propaganda or otherwise using hate speech or other elements, apathy is developed for vulnerable section, then that will lead to easily violation of their rights. Apathy will also break the constitutional value of fraternity. Social cohesion will break down, social capital will erode, the concept of unity in diversity will get a setback, which will result in communal violence, riots, and it can escalate all the way up to genocide. It will erode ethos of the society. It will erode the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It will erode the concept of Sarva Dharma Sambhav. It will erode the idea of India. That's how hatred is destructive of person's wisdom and conscience and can poison a nation's spirit. Now, what is the solution? One way of controlling negative attitude formation is social contact. In the DNS dated 7 January 2021, I have discussed with you the importance of social interaction. There we discussed the contact hypothesis given by Gordon Allport. We understood the importance of social contact, the importance of civic engagement in developing cohesion, and also acting as a barrier against negative attitude formation. Social contact, civic engagement give you an opportunity to correct your cognition. If you have been given wrong information, then with social interaction, you come to know the right thing. You may come to know that the negative image that was developed in your mind against certain people, community, that was not correct. And interaction on personal level also create the reactive emotions. Together, they help correct your attitude. Another method to preempt speech from causing the violence is a more proactive one. It is a method that was given by Jonathan and Maynard, which is counter speech. They have said that counter speech can counter the hate speech. You must be aware that presently we have many fact check websites and they do real-time fact check, especially of politicians. Meaning if wrong information is presented in public domain, you correct it there and then. It was also suggested by Jonathan and Maynard to create a counter speech narrative. I am picking this case from their work. In Kenya in 2012, a TV drama show was created. The show was on dangerous speech. It was designed to inoculate audience against hate speech, to train the mind of audience to be skeptical about hate speeches. If somebody is presenting the information in a very agitative way, you have to be skeptical about the information that he is giving, and if you are skeptical, then emotional outburst, the reactionary emotion in you because of the emotion of presenter will be very limited. Later on, as per the research work of some scholars at the University of Pennsylvania, Kenyans who watched the episodes were more skeptical about inflammatory speech than those who did not watch the episodes. See, many Indians are skeptical about politicians, especially the promises that are made before election. The negative image that many of us hold towards politicians, politics, or the poll promises, a large part of it has been developed because of media. You must have seen multiple movies presenting politicians in a bad light, highlighting their manipulations, their false promises. So when you get to read about promises of employment or housing or road construction or electrification or whatever, before election, you are not very elated, you're not excited. Rather, you are skeptical about it. So to fight hate speech, we have to develop counter speech, and to deal with agitative, provocative way of news presentation, which the CGI has raised a question on, we have to develop a counter way of news presentation, maybe the one that was there in Doordarshan, where news is given as information in calm and composed manner, so that the reactionary emotion is not there, negative attitude formation, even if some facts goes wrong, is minimal, and hence the negative behavior of citizens is minimal, and nation's spirit is safeguarded. There is a news article on page number 13 regarding COVID-19 performance ranking. The Lowy Institute, an Australian think tank, has come up with COVID-19 performance index. It takes into account 6 parameters: number of confirmed cases, number of cases per million population, number of deaths, deaths per million, confirmed cases as proportion of tests, and tests conducted per 1,000 people. New Zealand has topped the index, followed by Vietnam and Taiwan. India had a painful ranking of 86th. In South Asia, Sri Lanka has performed the best, having the 10th rank. Bangladesh has performed marginally better than India at 84, Nepal at 70, Pakistan at 69, Maldives at 25. Brazil has got the lowest score because of the attitude of the head of the government and ministers. United States also has got low score. I would like to bring your attention to India's ranking in Global Health Security Index. It's a comprehensive index of 195 countries released in 2019. It was prepared by Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security and Economist Intelligence Unit. Out of 195 countries, India was ranked 57th. The rank was fairly decent. But rank of 86 out of 98 country is very poor. But health preparedness and preparedness for pandemic as observed by Global Health Security Index was not that bad. Then why ranking of India's vis-a-vis COVID preparedness has stood out to be so poor? Is it the population? The general observation made by the COVID-19 Performance Index report says that population size is not of very significance when it comes to COVID-19 performance. Smaller countries were performing better in the beginning of the pandemic, but at the latter end, the difference in performance between smaller and larger countries were narrowed down. The ranking is also not very much related with levels of economic development, because if you see, Vietnam has stood number 2. US has a ranking of 94. The performance also not has much to do with the political system. The autocratic regimes of China or Iran has not been successful in enforcing a strict lockdown. The report says that democracies have done marginally better than autocratic regimes. Then what is the reason for India's poor performance in dealing with COVID-19? This is something that you have to keep thinking about, and we will come to a final conclusion post-pandemic. This article is from page number 10. Jaishankar suggests way forward for China ties. The External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, has tried to answer the question, how shall we be engaging with China? The relationship between India and China has always been that of cooperation and competition. But relationship seems to be fast deteriorating and has come to a crossroad. The seed of a strain was sown in the Indo-Sino War of 1962. But if you talk about the recent events, China was actually giving stapled visa to Indian citizens of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir in 2010. Recently, China also opposed India's membership to NSG and to permanent membership to UNSC. China also has been blocking UN listing of Pakistani terrorists. In recent time, there has been increased attempt by China to unilaterally redraw line of actual control. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is part of China's flagship Belt and Road Initiative, impinges on India's sovereignty. Recently, there has been increased construction in the border infrastructure, which ultimately culminated into deadly Galwan Valley clash. That and the aggressive posture of China even after that has bring India-Sino relation at a crossroad. How shall we be engaging with China? Should we engage, disengage? Should we cooperate? Should we compete? Should we try to isolate China at the global forum? What shall we do? To deal with China, the External Affairs Minister has suggested 3 mutuals and 8 broad propositions. The 3 mutuals suggested by the Minister are mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, mutual interest, which one can say are very closely aligned with Panchsheel principles, which was formed as part of Indo-China Agreement in 1954. One of the 5 principles under Panchsheel was mutual respect. Mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference aligns with mutual sensitivity. Then the principle of equality and mutual benefit can be said to be aligned with mutual interest. And all of them together must bring peaceful coexistence. To give expression to the concept of 3 mutuals, the Minister also has talked about 8 broad propositions. The Minister has said that agreements that has already been reached, they must be adhered to its entirety by both sides. And both sides needs to strictly observe and respect the LAC. So respect the treaty, respect the sovereign integrity. Both sides also need to have mutual sensitivity. Both countries needs to understand that peace and tranquility in the border forms the basis of all kind of relation. Also, when India and China are on board with regard to multipolar world, China needs to understand that multipolar Asia is the essential concept of the multipolar world. Bilateral relations are always reciprocal. So neither country must ignore the other country's aspiration. For example, getting the NSG membership. Both countries must take a long view of their bilateral relation, and hence there must be management of divergence and differences through dialogues like the border talks that we are having presently. This can form the basis of your answer in the mains exam to the question regarding engagement of India with China. There's a news article on page number 1, 18 opposition parties to boycott President's address. As you would know, from today the budget session of Parliament has begun and the President was scheduled to address the Parliament. The Constitution of India gives power to President to address either House of the Parliament or the joint sitting of both the Houses. Article 87 provides 2 special occasions on which President address a joint sitting. One is the new session of a new legislature after the general election. Without the presidential address, new legislature cannot start to function. And the second is to address the first sitting of Parliament each year. Originally, the Constitution had the provision of presidential address in the beginning of every session of the Parliament, meaning thrice a year. So in the provisional Parliament, Dr. Rajendra Prasad used to give a speech in the beginning of every session. But the first amendment to the Constitution in 1951, changes were brought to this provision. And now the President was required to address the Parliament only once a year. The President address to the joint sitting of the 2 houses is very important event in any democracy, because that is the moment in which the Parliament has been brought together, the President and the 2 houses. The President's address also holds relevance because it brings about the viewpoint of the government. The government uses the President's address to present its policy and legislative intents and whatever announcement it has to make. So it's important for you to know that speech that the President delivers is written by the government, not by the President's office. Because the speech makes lots of policy and legislative announcement, it is also an occasion for Member of Parliament to have a broad-based debate on governance in the country. And then a motion is moved in both houses thanking the President for his address. Because the speech has been written by the government, so Prime Minister replies to the motion of thanks and then the motion is put to vote. At this stage, Member of Parliament can express their disagreement and call for amendment. Why amendment? Because President address to the joint session of Parliament is a very important piece of document that shows policy and legislative intent of the government. Amendment to the President's speech has been done 5 times in Rajya Sabha in 1980, 89, 2001, 2015 and 2016. In Lok Sabha, of course, amendments have not been brought because you understand what will happen then. There is a news article on page number 5, Finalize Policy on Rare Diseases by March 31st. This is a directive from the Delhi High Court to the centre to finalize national health policy for rare diseases. It was drafted last year in February and then it was put in public domain for comments, but no progress has been made on this. This is not the first time. In fact, Delhi High Court has raised concern previously as well on no progress being made on finalizing the national health policy for rare diseases. The court has made certain observations. First, right to health and right to healthcare is a fundamental right, recognized by Supreme Court as part of right to life under Article 21. So it was incumbent on society in general and the government administration in particular to ensure that right to life is not compromised, even if there is only small chance of improvement in patient's condition. In many instances, AIIMS has given report to the court that in cases of rare diseases, patient has very minimal chance of improvement. But the court has taken the view that even in those cases, the right to life cannot be compromised. Also, in cases of exorbitant prices, patients and especially children, they must not be deprived of treatment for their condition. So to enforce this view and the fundamental right of citizens, the court is concerned regarding non-finalization of national policy on rare diseases because in the draft policy, the government has proposed crowdfunding for treatment of high-cost rare diseases. The section says that in certain cases, since the government cannot fully finance the treatment, the gap can be filled by seeking donations from prospective individuals or the corporates. You must be hearing and reading about crowdsourcing of treatment, crowdsourcing of helping elderlies, poor, etc. But if that goes unregulated, it has chance of misuse. So the guidelines regarding crowdsourcing in this regard is very important. But presently the policy is still at the draft stage and the earlier health policy of 2017 has been kept in abeyance by the government. The government has stopped using it and has not presented a new policy. So presently there is a policy vacuum in this regard and that is why the court is nudging the government to finalize it. Now we have come to the end of the session. The answer to yesterday's question of the day and today's question of the day is appearing on your screen. Attempt the question and give your answer in the comment section. And also attempt the DNS quiz on the eLearn platform to have a sense of completeness for today's current affair. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Take care.